and while fading to black. And then again, Jason will just be that little bit of silence, and I'll kick it in when I introduce you, so we'll be good there. All right, let's do this. I am fading to black now. 5, 4, 3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for August 21st, 2023. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Charles Martinet is ascending, and Nintendo talks about its approach to new hardware. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Jason Fanelli, everybody. Jason, how are you doing?
I am great. Finally getting over some jet lag, but now we are in the saddle and starting off with a pretty big piece of news that we were not expecting on a Monday morning.
Yeah, it was. I kind of came out of nowhere for me. I love Chuck. I love Charles Martinet. So I mean, it's going to be. I'm interested to see like what my take even is, because we haven't had time. Like, you sent it over as I was doing the rundown. I had to run my kid to the eye doctor this morning. Came right back, sat down. And the first thing I saw was that message from you. And so I was like, oh, okay, man, Charles Martinet taking on a new role. Well, we'll get into all that. But I don't know, Jason, tell people who you are, where they can find you, all that stuff. We've read your name on this show many times now.
Yes, I have been doing freelance writing in some sort of background, mercenary work for 15 years now. I have over 40 bylines across 15 years. I feel so old. But right now, I'm mostly on GameSpot writing news. In fact, one of our stories coming up here is sourced to another site who sourced me. We'll get to that.
Okay, fantastic. Shortly. I love when that happens. Sorry, yeah.
But also MMORPG. I just did a review there over Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, which is surprisingly good. There's a weird tension between the video game part and the musical part that kind of clashes at certain times, and having bit of a theater background, to kind of some weird, but otherwise definitely check that out. It's a fun and interesting idea. But yeah, so I've had a Game Informer article recently on Netflix games, and everything that they're doing to build that portfolio up. Yeah, I've been around, Jeff. Yeah, I've been around for a long time.
Well, I'm glad we can get you on the show in person instead of just your text, for sure. But
happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you're back home safe and all that. So, all right, let's get into the mess. But before we do, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Charles Martinet is no longer the voice of Mario. This comes from Michael McWhorter at Polygon. Actor Charles Martinet, known as the voice of Mario, Luigi, and Wario in Nintendo's Super Mario Bros. Games for 3 decades, will no longer voice those characters, Nintendo announced on Monday. Martinet will segue into the role of Mario Ambassador, in which he will continue to travel the world sharing the joy of Mario. Nintendo fans noticed a change to the voices of Mario and Wario in recent trailers for Super Mario Bros. Wonder and WarioWare Move It, 2 new games coming to Nintendo Switch this fall. After weeks of silence and speculations from fans, Nintendo finally confirmed the change. Martinet, 67, has been the identifiable voice behind Mario since 1991. He first started performing Mario's chipper, exaggerated Italian-flavored voice for Nintendo at trade shows, but went on to record the character's voice for the first time in a Nintendo game in Super Mario 64 in 1996. Jason, I hear this and I get a little sad. I really like Charles Martinet. He really has defined Mario, and as I said, WarioWare, he does the entire cast of WarioWare, that sort of thing. And so I'm like, man, that I'm sad. And yet, how many people get the chance to sort of gracefully and move on from a role that they've been identified with for so long and sort of oversee the next steps while they move into quasi-retirement at 67 years old? This is a nice story, probably, right?
Yes, I would like to think so. I did have a moment where in the last hour since it's broken, I went through the whole Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief. Well, if it was denial, no, it can't be. Then it was anger. It better not be Chris Pratt. Then it would be bargaining. Can it be anybody besides Chris Pratt? Then it was depression. Oh, man, he's really done. And then acceptance, just like you said. Maybe he just wants to do different and better things. Now, at first, I thought maybe he wanted to take a step back, maybe do less. He is getting older, 67, as you mentioned. But if he's going to be flying around the world as the Mario ambassador, whatever that means, that seems a bit more taxing to me than just recording in a studio. If it was going to be less work on him, you would think they would reverse it. He would keep voicing, but then somebody else would be the Mario ambassador. Either way, if it comes out that this was his choice, it was an amicable agreement, and he just wants to fly around the world and talk about how much he likes Mario, I'm all for it. The man has certainly deserved it.
Yes.
Certainly deserves that. But if there's something else going on behind the scenes that comes out later that may color this a little bit, that I am slightly worried about, but we shall see.
Yeah, I think it's it does seem to be like with him like moving on into this new role of Mario ambassador, which is actually, something he has mostly been doing as well for years now. He always shows up at E3, and then he showed up at he'll show up at stuff like Summer Game Fest, or like around events around that time. And I remember like one of the first E3s I went to, it was him doing the digital Mario face where he's on a microphone backstage and like he has a camera and you can see who's out there, and he's like, Brian Crescente, yeah, how's it going? And it's like, oh, what the fuck this is really weird. So but I'll say whenever I've interacted with him in environments like that, he seems to really enjoy that. So I wonder if he views that as more work, or if it's like, getting into the studio, recording new lines. Maybe that's kind of like, that's a hassle. And I kind of want to rest, but seeing fans, that's invigorating. I really like that. So I hope that like, this is that he came to this role because it's like, oh no, that's something I would like to keep doing and can do. Now that, Super Mario Brothers Wonder is coming out later this year, the trailer definitely sparked speculation that the voices would be different. I heard it and I was like, no, that's Charles Martinet. It's just he recorded new lines. Apparently, it seems wrong because
part of that denial.
Yes. Oh, yes. The denial stage. Exactly. So now here we are, and they say they're going to release a video with Miyamoto and Martinet coming out and like saying goodbye in some way. Do you think they like introduce the new voice actor, or do they kind of like just keep that in the background?
I think they kind of have to. And the reason I say that is because we now live in an age where people are worried about AI replacing humans.
Yeah.
So that if they're going to have a new voice actor, even if it's a bunch of people, one taking Mario, one taking Luigi, one taking Wario, and all the different characters that he voiced, you kind of have to bring them out so people aren't like, they're not just replacing Charles with AI, are they? Right. I also think that this is a great way to start the next Nintendo Direct. Notice they did not say when exactly they were going to release that video. So if they have their normal September Nintendo Direct coming up in the next month or so, that would be a great place to see him off, whether it's at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, wherever they want to put that. They know that that's where the most Nintendo fan eyes are going to be at one place, and we can say our goodbyes, for lack of a better term. Which also reminds me, when I first read that message, I thought he was dead.
I also thought that. Even though you said that, and I'm like, man, this white text on a red background seems like we are honoring a fallen friend. I'm like, what? Yes. No, definitely not. Please. Yeah. So yes.
So I'll take Mario Ambassador over no longer alive any day of the week.
Exactly, absolutely. I think you're right that like I really hope that's not what they're doing. That they're doing some AI replacement thing. I think that's probably doubtful at this point, but who knows? You never know. And so I hope they come out and say what's happening. Chances that it's Chris Pratt going forward.
My heart says 0%, but my head says 50-50 maybe. The movie did make a ton of money, whether because of him or despite him. So we'll see. God, I hope not.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
He would be expensive, I think. So they probably they definitely, if they're going to use a voice actor going forward, it would be someone probably someone equivalent to what Martinet was when he started.
Yeah.
But Just in
Troy Baker.
Yes, there we go. Troy Baker. That's the real answer here. That's what we actually need. Chris Pratt was fine in the movie. Like he did not get in the way, and he did not distract. That's all I wanted from that performance. So
yeah,
he was fine. I think you're right about the direct. We get to the direct. They are who knows at what point in the direct, like you said, but I think in early September we should be early September, mid-September we should have a direct. I guess they have that Nintendo event in early September, so I suppose
true. Maybe I forgot about that. Maybe there.
Yeah, maybe yeah, or a direct link to that event, and then he shows up at that event and does Mario ambassadorship. Yeah, again, whatever that's gonna look like. Again, it's just him probably just standing, taking pictures next to a Mario statue, and that's fine. That's great. I'm glad that he's able to sort of have this nice little relaxing point of his career now. Although how many new lines was he ever recording for stuff? It always felt like they were using the same lines for most games, and here and there would definitely be new stuff for sure, but for the core Mario games, it always felt like, no, this is still the stuff from Super Mario 64 mostly. That's probably not true.
HD remakes of Wahoo. Yeah, that's
exactly
right. That's true. It's not a whole lot of intense recording, just a lot of fake strains and occasional yips for joy. So,
exactly. Just the excited Mario, the voice pack. Just go keep that downloaded forever. All right, Nintendo boss is talking about the company's approach to new tech. This is from Nintendo Everything. Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa has weighed in on how the company approaches new technology. In an interview with NHK translated by Nintendo Everything, Furukawa indicated rather than pursuing tech for the sake of it, it's instead about how they can lead to revolutions in the act of play itself. Also mentioned is that Nintendo is pursuing new technology in general, but isn't focusing on one specific area. Here's kind of like the whole passage that's been translated. While there's no particular technology we are focusing on at the moment, we are conducting research on a variety of new technologies. However, I believe the most important thing for our company is not seeking new technologies for novelty's sake, but rather considering how they can lead to revolutions in the act of play itself. The idea is that if we become convinced that incorporating a certain technology could provide customers with a fresh and surprising experience, then we covet its research more strongly, making investments when necessary as well. Do you think that sounds pretty close to what Nintendo's hardware approach has been up to this point, right? Do you think that that's any different?
No, not at all. This is them saying we don't care about cutting edge graphics. We don't care about top of the line, fast processing, stuff like that. Right. We want new things that are fun and exciting and people can enjoy. Now that pool might be a little more limited. I think one of the things with Switch 2 or whatever the next Switch console was going to be called is how do you iterate on the half portable, half TV-based console, which itself iterated on the Wii U, which was not a good idea.
Right.
And then going all the way back through their history. They kind of pigeonhole themselves a little bit in being this company that wants to focus so much on new ways to play rather than enhanced ways to play the older games. And I'm sure a lot of their fans are, appreciative, but also banging their head against the wall, being like, we just want 4K Mario and Zelda. Can you just once, please, give us this? But I get it. Obviously, it's worked for them. The Switch continues to sell crazy. And then the Wii goes without saying. I worked gaming retail in those days, and I have flashbacks all the time. But to me, there comes a point where innovative ways to play, not that they're going to run out, but they're eventually going to hit those walls like the Wii U, where we think this is a lot of fun, but consumers, they don't. So we have to move on faster than we want to.
Yeah, I think that this is still the right idea for them. Like, they should be exploring these ideas that that are exciting and new. I think they just need to be pretty conservative with the final implementation of the product, right? I think you have a core idea that works really well, that gets people to buy a lot of games. You don't want to mess with that. I think, Furukawa, pretty conservative leader of Nintendo, is very unlikely to mess with the Switch. We've heard rumors that the Switch follow-up is also going to be a hybrid. Not a surprise. But
no, not at all.
But still, it's like, there's always the chance that they're like, no, we have this Miyamoto stumbled on this idea in his attic, and he's like, he's going to bring it down here. Now everything's different. I think that they should pursue those ideas that get them excited. Just, wedge it into the corner of what the Switch already is, kind of like the IR camera in there. Now, that means a lot of times these ideas might get relegated and get left to the side. but oh well. I think that's what happens. And I think if Nintendo wants to use them and take advantage of them, they can. But putting them in a place where when third-party developers decide not to support these things, which they invariably many of them do, ignore new features. It doesn't feel like this vestigial tail sticking out the side in some awkward way. It's like you're not even thinking about it. Like, who honestly thinks about the infrared camera? Who thinks about, any of the features, even on like a DualSense, where it's like, this is the main thing. It's like when a developer doesn't support all the features of DualSense, it's still a controller. It still works as a controller great. So it's I think Nintendo needs to kind of keep themselves in that realm for the most part, especially because, again, the Switch has sold so well. It's their first console ever that had more than a billion pieces of software sold for it. Yeah, they're going to follow this up. And that's also part of their pattern too, right, Jason? You go back to like the Game Boy got the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance, and the DS got the 3DS, and the Wii got the Wii U. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, though. But they usually, when they have a good idea, the Nintendo had the Super Nintendo. So when they have a good idea that does really well, you usually get a follow-up that is pretty much identical. And that's still what I'm expecting here. If they were to include anything, like, for me, I'm just like, put an SSD in there and let's call it a day. But I don't even know if I expect that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say OLED screen, which they've already done. Just make that the standard. There were some things that they may go back to LCD. Nah, once you open that box, you can't go back. HD Rumble comes to mind, and one of those things that it was there, but then
that's exactly right. Yeah,
doesn't have to be there. 1-2 Switch used it, I think, and that might be it. I don't even know if the new one used it.
I think like some of the Mario 3D platformer games use it, but it's like not like to the degree that 1-2 Switch used it, where it's like, oh, how many ice cubes are in there? It's like, no, this is just like our haptics, which cool. That's good, but they're not going to not have haptics going forward. That's going to be a standard feature.
Sure. No, I agree with you that an SSD would probably be the biggest thing, or even some sort of internal storage that is not as limited as the Switch was.
Yeah, there's new
32 on board or something like
32
that.
32 gigabytes. The rumor is they're going to include a lot more in the next one. Yeah. It probably won't be SSD, but it won't be the slower storage that's in the Switch now, which is eMMC. They're going to do, someone mentioned, I think it's UFS is the follow-up technology to eMMC. That's probably what's going to be in there, and that'll be significantly faster. But it's like, that's what we're talking about, though. We want the same stuff, just faster and more powerful. And Nintendo will almost certainly have some idea boomeranged into this thing that it's going to be like, hey, well, here's a bullet point we'll put on the box. Here's what we're going to go when we talk to USA Today. This is what we're going to talk to them about and get them to write a headline about. And then I think they know that is part of the forced obsolescence process of how you move people from one thing to the other. You talk big. I mean, everyone looks, again, Sony's like, hey, the menus are different. That's why you got to get into a PS5. It's a better menu. It's like, this is underneath. It's the same thing as the PS4. They just put a new coat of paint on top. But but when I spent $500 buying a PS5, I'm like, I need these new menus. That's pretty cool. And then I never thought about it again. But it got me to spend the money. And so Nintendo recognizes that, and I think that they will play with those ideas some, and then kind of pull back and just have you buy games for your Switch 2, like you exactly how we want.
Now, if they come out and say that like Labo, the sequel to Labo is the actual box that the Switch 2 comes in, and you can manipulate that, then maybe we have a problem. But right now we're okay.
Yeah, man. Listen, Nintendo's going to mess you up with some cardboard for sure, without a doubt. That's what they do.
Sure.
All right, Nintendo president talks not resting on laurels in harsh battle, getting people to spend time on games. This is from My Nintendo News. Nintendo is at an all-time high right now. The Switch is one of the company's best-selling systems ever. The Super Mario Brothers movie was an incredible success, and it's still pursuing different opportunities like Super Nintendo World. However, that doesn't mean Nintendo is resting on its laurels. Furukawa, the president of Nintendo, spoke with NHK and noted that the company needs to continue putting out things that people truly want. He pointed to the fact that there are many forms of entertainment, and it's a very harsh battle ensuring that people are still interested in video games. Again, full translation from a Nintendo Everything here. We always keep in mind that if we do not keep putting out things that people truly want, they'll get bored of us. Right now, there are various forms of entertainment besides video games. I believe that making people want to spend their precious time on video games, and Nintendo games no less, is a very harsh battle. We approach everything while resolved to the fact that at any time, people may start thinking they do not need Nintendo games anymore. And I mean, they're definitely right, and I think they see the threat out there more clearly than ever, because when they tried to like have a big presence on mobile, Nintendo games didn't float. Like, right? They couldn't keep up with what people wanted to spend time with on mobile. So it's not like that Nintendo name is some key that unlocks success wherever they go. So it's like they're in this gentle sort of environment where they're like, hey, on Nintendo platforms, when we're taking advantage of all this stuff and feels special, it is special. But it's like, man, that is a thing that could disappear at any moment, right?
Yeah, and I think they need to foster it. We talk a lot about Nintendo being very kid friendly and always like family first, and that's where it is. A lot of what fuels Nintendo now, while they do bring out new technologies and new games, it is still very much rooted in nostalgia. Right, like even Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom still capture that original Legend of Zelda feeling of exploration. Mario is still a 2D platformer for most games because we remember playing the original when we were kids. So they need to now foster that feeling in the next generation of kids and make sure that they get in there as they grow up and they can continue that nostalgic cycle. And that, I think, is the big issue, because you have things like, iPads, as you said, and iPhones, even like the Amazon Kids tablet, which every parent swears by. Don't believe them if they tell you otherwise. And there's no Nintendo games on there. There are some, avenues to kids' YouTube who may be playing Nintendo and they get exposure there, but they don't have the actual Nintendo experiences. And that's what they need to figure out. Do they release their own tablet? Maybe, or do they do something like that? Or do they just continue to try to put their software in other places where more people can be exposed to it? I do not envy the people making those decisions because, like you said, on the Nintendo console, we expect it, we love it. Outside of that, that's where things get difficult.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where we've heard this sort of talk from other presidents of other video game companies before. It's like, hey, we're competing with Netflix and we're competing with people going out and all this stuff. And I think that's all these companies are recognizing our competitors aren't really these other video game companies. If people are spending time on video games, chances are they're going to stumble over to one of our video games. And if they don't, well, we were never going to win them over anyhow because we're just not their tastes. So, but if they're playing video games, that's like half the battle right there. It is people who are like, man, I would play video games, but TikTok is just so much easier. That's just straight dopamine right to my brain. And it's like, how do you compete with this very free, the thing that is very easy to very accessible. You can watch it anywhere, and new content is just constantly being created for it at a rapid pace. It's it's actually kind of impossible to compete with that. Right. You sort of have to establish yourself as something different and special. And I hope Nintendo, like, what this really means is they continue to focus on innovation, and that the time and money that goes into something like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, they recognize that is what sets them apart. And it's like, don't look for shortcuts. Keep putting that into the games going forward. And if they do that, they're probably going to be fine, right?
Yes, I imagine that as long as, the video game industry as a whole stays where it is, they're going to be a massive player in it. They just have to maybe start branching out into, we talked about streaming services. They have multiple franchises that are ripe for the picking as far as streaming shows are concerned. Some people are even doing it for them on YouTube with fan versions of Star Fox and other things like that. Fox in Space, by the way, if you've never watched it, you should.
Okay, yeah, definitely will. My kids love all the YouTube sort of fan created stuff, so yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's awesome. But like, for some reason, they haven't jumped into that boat yet, and I don't understand why. Netflix plays in my house more than anything else. So if Nintendo wanted to get some of their faces, Kirby, perfect. Even if they just put right back at you on Netflix, or those old cartoons on Netflix if they're not there yet. Stuff like that, just to get those faces in front of those kids, so they start to recognize them. And then when they see them in Best Buy or a retail store, if those, parents even take their kids to retail stores anymore, they'd be like, oh, I remember that. What's that? And then all of a sudden we have a gamer in the house.
Yeah.
I'm making it sound easier than it probably is, but
it makes me wonder though, why isn't it that easy? And I'm sure it comes down to Nintendo especially wanting to keep their hands on the product that ends up coming out as one of these streaming services. And also, like, there's always so many more like lawyers involved than you ever imagine. I'm like, okay, I guess it makes sense. But boy, that's why I'm glad that a lot of those fan things aren't getting sort of nuked from the internet. It seems like for the most part, they're getting away with it. And I'm sure part of that is like these companies like, there's a chance parody law might cover this, and we don't want to like enshrine the legality of this. We want to be able to send ceases and desist in the future and hope that they work. But yeah, I was just watching. My kids were watching a ton of Pikmin stuff and a ton of Sonic stuff on YouTube, and you know they'll go watch the movie, but for the most part, they're like, no, there's this weird Sonic video that we just want to watch over and over. And so yeah, even Nintendo letting that stuff happen is good. But you're right, like the big mover and shaker will happen when there's officially licensed movies, officially licensed shows, and obviously the Super Mario Brothers movie proved that. Now Nintendo just needs to figure out what the rest of their very likable IPs, like where do they fit in that puzzle. But I wouldn't be too precious about it if I were them. Try a bunch of different stuff and see what they can do. But yeah, overall, I'm just glad that when it comes to the games, they're like, yeah, let's put a ton of time and thought into this and try to keep things fresh and entertaining and enticing so we get more people over here.
Yep.
The Pokemon Company thinks it still has a long way we can keep going on new Pokemon designs. This is from Nintendo Everything. Pokemon designs have been made across 9 different generations with over 1,000 creatures. But it sounds like there's still plenty of room left in the tank when it comes to new ideas. As part of a group interview at the 2023 Pokemon World Championships, the Pokemon CEO Takato Utsunomiya was asked about challenges in coming up with new designs. This doesn't appear to be an issue as a new generations of developers will bring about their own ideas. Utsunomiya also doesn't believe having a lot of Pokemon is a problem and mentioned we probably still have a long way we can keep going. Is this, because I know this is one of the reasons you were out there, is this your story that they sourced?
This is it. So, we found it.
So tell me, like, what was, like, when they say that, like, is that something you like you buy, or do you feel like they're saying that because there's no chance in hell they could ever feel comfortable rebooting the Pokemon and starting there with a new 151?
I think it's the former. And he made a point when we were having this conversation. He said, yeah, there's 1,000 Pokemon right now, but there are hundreds of thousands of real life species in the world. We have barely scratched the surface. They've only been to what, 8, 9 regions of the world. Maybe one of them, they've gone back to a couple of times. So they still see plenty of source material just existing in the world for them to pull inspiration from. Now, granted, we still get designs like Klefki, the pair of car keys, but at the same time,
I love Klefki.
Me too, but it is just, you know, a set of keys. I lose them. I lose Klefki in my house all the time. Yes. But I mean, he is right. They have over 1,000, which sounds like a ton, but the games have been out since what, 95, 96, 97. So it's 1,000 Pokemon over 30 years or whatever, are coming up on 30 years, if my math is right. So that does leave a lot more designs out there. Do they start to decrease how many they introduce generation to generation? I think next after Scarlet and Violet, whenever that is the 10th generation, right? If memory serves.
That's right. Yeah,
they could decide, you know what? All new designs, an entire game, 10th generation. We'll add some later, except for Pikachu. Pikachu has to be there,
of course.
So
they're not. They don't hate money. They know.
150 new designs plus Pikachu.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like they are not worried. They're not worried about making new Pokemon. They're not worried about new designs because they see, like, every time they choose a new region, that's a whole new ecosystem to pull from. And it does make sense. When I think about it, makes sense that they would go that route. But I also wonder how many of those designs will be interesting creatures from that neck of the woods and not just a bag of trash. Yeah. I love Trubbish.
I love Trubbish.
Don't get me wrong. But he is a bag of trash.
Yes.
Let's not get,
at a certain point, there's so many things in nature, but what's in my office right here? Oh, look at that bag of trash I need to take out. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the problem isn't maybe that there's a lack of inspiration in the world for these artists to draw upon, but is there a problem where, hey, over 1,000 Pokemon, it's hard for people to build attachments to these new Pokemon because there's so many, and many of these are going to be forgotten and they feel less special. Is that an issue that they are concerned about, or do you think that they should worry about?
I don't think it's so much of an issue with their newer players. I think being introduced to this huge pool of Pokemon, people are going to pick their favorites no matter what generation they're from. My favorite is from the Gold and Silver era, Houndoom. So but I've been playing them since 1997 when they first launched here in America. So I don't think they're so much worried about that with the newer players. Older folks like me, like us, yes, because I don't remember all 1,000 Pokemon. I had to look up what the 1,000th Pokemon was, and I had, caught it not that long ago in Scarlet and Violet. So I don't think it's something that they're ever going to worry about, because people are going to pick their favorites anyway. They're going to have their favorite teams. They're going to remember fondly the ones from the generations that they played, like their favorite Hoenn team or their favorite Sinnoh team. And if they can bring that back up into the new game, whether it's via something like Pokemon Home, where it's the actual creatures from those games, or catching new iterations of that same team, they're just going to do that. And you'll have your people who want to fill the Pokedex. You'll have your people who want to fill the Pokedex with shinies. They know the players that they have. And then you'll have the people who just competitively battle and only pick high meta in competition Pokemon, like all the ones that we saw at the World Championships. They know that they have a wide palette, and they're going to keep doing what they're doing because it keeps working. Very much Nintendo-like in the Pokemon Company's approach, which does make sense.
Yes, it does. And it hasn't failed them yet. And so whenever it comes to will the Pokemon Company change something, the answer, I think, defaults to no for just about everything. They're going to keep they talked about, we're going to look at taking more time in the future. It's like you're commissioning a study, and when we come back and it says we should take more time, we'll be like, well, that's interesting. And then they won't. They're going to keep doing things the way that they've been doing because it makes them a lot of money and it's working. And even when the detrimental effects come into play, they don't have detrimental results. So, yeah, I until that starts being a problem, until they actually see something negative on their top line or their bottom line, I think the Pokemon Company, we can assume, is going to be business as usual going forward. All right. The Bethesda executive and former World of Warcraft director have been clashing over Starfield's leaked title screen because we live in a stupid world. This comes from Chris Scullion at VGC. A Bethesda executive has clashed with a former World of Warcraft lead over the latter's comments on Starfield's leaked title screen. Former World of Warcraft director Mark Kern tweeted a screenshot of the Starfield title screen on Saturday and suggested that not enough time had been spent on it. The start screen of a game can reveal a lot about how rushed the team was and how much pride they took in their work, Kern wrote. Starfield's start screen either shows hasty shipping deadlines by a passionate team overworked or a team that didn't care. Listen, I had to stop reading what he wrote. I think he might go on here, but have you ever read anything into a start screen anywhere near that?
Yeah, I've read one thing on start screens, the words press start.
Yes,
that's it.
Exactly.
And then I press start and then I move on. Granted, some of them I do recall, but not for the design of it. Like Mass Effect is a perfect example. I will always remember that start screen because of the song Vigil. It just says Mass Effect press start, but I would sit on that screen while I was doing other things because that song's incredible. Was I enamored by the actual look of space in that? Yeah, it was fine.
It's fine.
But that's not why I stood there. I know you brought me on for expert analysis, and I appreciate you doing that, but I can only offer 2 words of expert analysis in this story. Who cares?
Who cares?
Just shut up. Who cares? There's so many other things we could be talking about, even involving this game, and we're talking about the start screen.
It is
really.
It's puddle news. It really is, and this is the deeper thing.
News.
So to skip over the detail. Like Mark Kern, first of all, just sucks. Mark Kern, look at me. You could tweet at me and get mad. You fucking suck. You've always sucked. You were a Gamergate guy. You suck. Get out of here. Honestly, just stop. I never want to see you again. Let's just be clear. You suck. But then Bethesda's Pete Hines came out and fought with him a little bit. Again, he's just this is stupid. I think some other developers made some sarcastic remarks about it, but for the most part, I think everyone regrets interacting with Mark Kern. And of course, that's all you're going to end up doing because this is just his grift now at this point, is to get attention. Maybe he gets some Twitter blue money. I have no idea. But this sort of thing happens before every major game release, right? The FUD comes out, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it's this fertile ground because people are just so anxious about these things. It's just really what this is a sign that people deeply care about these games, and that these sorts of concerns that if you were to put them in context, you'd be like, this is crazy. What are you talking about? The fact that it can even even the people can't ignore an obvious troll or an obvious sort of just a dumb take. It's like, we can't, because it's like, man, this game that we've spent years coveting and craving, it's almost here. We're going to spend some money on it. And every time you spend money, you're like, man, I hope it's worth it. People are just have this so much anxiety about this that it's like, it's just manifesting in this puddle news, and it's just going to keep happening. I'm like, I wish there was some solution, but I don't really know if there is. You like, I guess tell people go play other games until your thing is here, and then just maybe not put so much hope into these games. I don't know. What do you think?
I wish we would all, like, a collective light bulb would go off in all of our heads, and we would care about things that actually matter in the game. No offense to the people that make the start screens. You do wonderful work.
Yes.
And it is a very important thing. We have to press start to play the game.
That's right.
However, there are more pressing concerns in all of these games than what we're looking at. Also notable is this person's, according to his bio, his favorite game of all time is Chrono Trigger, and that is just a press start screen too, buddy. What's different between Chrono Trigger and Starfield? I don't really know. I do get, like, Pete Hines, Papa Bear coming out to protect his Cubs.
Oh, sure, yeah.
In Exile, a fellow Microsoft studio, coming out as joking around to stick with their brothers and sisters. I get that.
Yep.
But would I have rather this just wasn't a story in the first place? Yes. 100% yes.
Yep, definitely. Mark Kern should go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars bringing that Factor 5 thing to every PAX for 10 years again. That was a good use of money.
Yeah, get under the bus.
Now Factor 5, Red 5, excuse me. Factor 5 is a good studio, though. I wish would come back. Embracer Group net sales rise by 47% in Q1. This comes from Jeffrey Rousseau at gamesindustry.biz. Embracer Group has published its financial results for Q1, showing growth in net sales in all but one operating segment. Here's what you need to know for the period ending June 30th, 2023. For the numbers, net sales were about $947 million, up 47% year over year. A lot of that came from PC and console sales, $364 million, up 74%. And then mobile was down 3%. And so for their net profit, they're looking at about $236 million, which is, you would think, pretty good. Like, that's that's if you were Embracer and you were making all these big purchases, and then you put out a handful of games that actually did pretty well, and now you're making profit. That's you're good there. But the last time we heard from them talk about this stuff, it's like, they said in so many words, what they have coming out right now isn't enough, and they need to be hitting like so many more big games per year. And it's like, I'm skeptical. I'm like already impressed that you've put out some stuff. I'm like trying to remember that there was a couple of games recently they put out that did well. I think Dead
Island 2.
Dead Island 2 is the one I'm thinking of. Like 2 million, 3 million sales. It's like, yeah, that if Embracer Group puts out one of those a year, I think that should be good. If they put out 2 or 3 a year, they should be golden. But it sounds like they won't be golden, even if they're profitable, because it's like they have all this debt to service, I suppose, and all these other issues. But yeah, I overall, like, what's your take on, like, when you go to, like, try to take the temperature of a big, weird, hulking publisher like Embracer, and what do you think the future looks like for them?
It always fascinates me, like with Square Enix used to, come out with the Tomb Raider games. They didn't sell 10 million copies, so it's a failure, but it sold 6 million copies. That to me seems like you did pretty good. So to hear net sales rise by 47% and they're still not happy, it's this whole, like, endless growth cycle. We always need to grow, we always need to make profit thing. That is just, the current state of the world's economics in a nutshell. I do think, though, that any good news is appreciated from Embracer, considering the $2 billion deal that fell through earlier this year, and the poor CEO or COO, whoever it was, has to go on this roundtable interview right after it happens, looking like his favorite pet just passed away, talking about how bad it is that this happened. So to have this, they have to see some sort of silver lining here. Now, there are some things that they have coming out between now and the end of the year: Payday 3, Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2, Alone in the Dark, some other things. So maybe that keeps going. Maybe it gets where they want it to be. Particularly in PC console savings are up 74% year on year, and that's only going to get better with the games I just mentioned. But at the same time, I am curious to how they're going to spin it in a way that it's not as big as we want it to be, which will always confuse me. Yeah. Yeah.
Grubb, muted.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're stuck with me now.
Yeah. Thanks, Jan. Wow, that's good to have a producer here. The key point about the Saudi government pulling out the $2 billion investment when like they had their big conference call right after that, and Lars Wingefors was like, "Hey, this is really bad. We wish this didn't happen." Investors respond to that saying, "This sounds like an excuse," and they were like, "That's one of the big reasons that their stock fell so much." Is like there must be all kinds of other problems if you were coming to us with this sob story about something that went wrong. You need to just come in and take that stuff on the chin and tell us what you're going to do next. They are at that point now. The way that they're talking about it now is we've moved past that. That is not an issue anymore. Like we are completely focused on our future. And you wonder if okay, that's the footing they should have taken at the time. Of course, that would have been difficult to take like the day that it happened. But that is the story they need to be telling. Is we do know how to make successful games. Remnant 2 just came out and has already sold 1 million copies. And if these are the kinds of games that they are going to be like able to put out and roll like from one success to another, there is no reason Embracer Group shouldn't be able to work, other than maybe it's a bit unwieldy, a bit too big. But they've been cutting costs. That means cutting some jobs. It's like, and hopefully like, okay, well, if you've done that now, that stinks. But hopefully now that means that the people that are there can just keep working on it and actually accomplish something. And those good games can pay for all the other stuff that's happening. I still don't know if this company is in that position, because it's so big. They spent so much money. It feels like that might still be pretty far off. But I think I want Embracer to kind of keep doing what it's been doing if we can rely on things like Dead Island 2 and Remnant 2, right?
Yes, they're going to have at least one or two marquee titles, tent poles, to hold them up, because they are, they're balancing on a tightrope here. They are very large. Unwieldy is a great word for it, like you just said, because they went on that spending spree. Unfortunately, I do not anticipate them being done cutting. I know they've said already that they're going to cut more stuff, and that will lead to more layoffs and more cursing on social media and all that stuff, which deserved. Obviously, you're making this kind of money and you're still cutting costs. What's going on here? But yeah, eventually they'll get to a point where they're where they want to be, and then they start being more efficient in their product line and stuff like that. Maybe another mobile release. That was the one area where they were down, and mobile is such a moneymaker. They might have to figure out something there. But again, this is good news for them. The fact that we're talking about it so maudlin is very strange. And, hopefully they realize that too.
Yes.
And they'll just leave things alone.
Exactly. And they could kind of just build on this momentum. And they have so many studios, so many games, they should be able to do that.
I agree.
18-year Call of Duty veteran announces he's leaving Activision. This is from Kenneth Shepard at Kotaku. After 18 years, David Vonderhaar, the studio design director at Treyarch, announced he's leaving Activision after shipping 8 Call of Duty games since 2004. Vonderhaar made the announcement on his personal LinkedIn account, where he confirmed he's moved on to a new project at a different studio, but didn't go into specifics in his post. He also thanked his former co-workers at Treyarch and the Call of Duty fans that have played the studio's games over the years. Today, I am sharing that I have left Activision and Treyarch after an incredible 18 years and 8 Call of Duty games. He then goes on to thank his co-workers and kind of just hint that he's going somewhere else. But again, as the story says, doesn't specify where. 18 years is a long time to be anywhere, let alone working on basically one video game franchise. There were some other things from Treyarch in that time, that Quantum of Solace game, maybe a few other things, but mostly it was David Vonderhaar's the Call of Duty guy over at Treyarch. That's right. So that's a big career. He should be proud of it. And I also think it's cool that these big names from these studios can move on and start something new, or go work on something new and keep their career going somewhere else, and maybe a little with a little bit less pressure on them. I don't know. Do you have a history of David Vonderhaar?
I know you just said he was the Call of Duty guy at Treyarch, but I know to many people he was the Call of Duty guy.
That's true. Yeah.
Like when Treyarch would come around, they would be excited to see him on stage and see what he's bringing up. What's coming up from his studio's Call of Duty games.
Yeah.
This is another end of an era sort of thing. I don't think it's quite as impactful as the one we started the show with, Charles Martinet. But for for Call of Duty fans, this guy has been a part of that whole Call of Duty project. I would even imagine he was involved in projects that Treyarch didn't develop for all of this time. So to see him and his voice leaving now is to the benefit of whatever studio and project he's working on. Now we get to decide or to speculate where he's going, what he's doing, who pulled him away from this marquee franchise, who had the financial backing, who had the idea, the IP, whatever it is, to pull him out. Because as you said, 18 years is a long time to be doing anything. And with a name like Call of Duty, it's not going anywhere. They're going to make Call of Duty games every year. Even when they say they're not making a Call of Duty game, they make a Call of Duty game. So what could have been so enticing that he was able to be recruited out of this position? That is where my mind goes.
Yeah, I think that there's this is just a sign that there continues to be a lot of money out there to start up new studios, to pull talent away to relatively new studios, or even if they're established projects. Like, no, we're going to pay the big money to get the big name over here to help us because we know that they could deliver a finished product in a reasonable amount of time on budget. Those things are super rare, and that collection of talents. And so those talented people are in high demand still, and the money's out there. So I think Dave Von der Harst was probably able to go get that. I think of like studios like Respawn, which of course came out of Infinity Ward that worked on Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Respawn had this huge burst of success after Titanfall tried to get there. I love Titanfall. But commercially, it kind of almost got there. Then Apex Legends comes along. It's a huge success. And since then, a lot of the key people at Respawn have left to go start their own studios because, again, there's a lot of money out there, and they're going to get it. So I think it's probably that fertile ground for new projects is probably. Let me make sure I'm not muted again because I hit the space bar. I think that's what happened last time. No, we're good. So I think that
Hands
fertile
up while you're talking.
Exactly.
Hands up while you're talking.
That fertile ground though is just. It's probably a good thing because it keeps the dynamism of game development at the top, where it's like, hey, if you feel like run down working on the same project, go get your money, go work on something new, and come up with a new idea. And it's like that's not really happening in a lot of other creative fields, but video games, it very much is. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, and I wonder if he's making another first-person shooter or if he's trying a different genre as well. I think there might be some enticement there as well. It'll be interesting to see when we see his name next, and also how long it'll take. We don't know where this project is.
Right, and I mean, one last thing, like you can imagine someone in David Von der Harst's position. Where do you go from there, right? Like
exactly.
When you're a director, a big director in movies. Like you go from one project to the other, and you're constantly working with either one studio, or you go back and forth between different studios. But if David Von der Harst was an employee of Activision, and it's like, and it's okay, so can he get a promotion? It's like no, he needs to be in charge of Call of Duty. Like he needs to be. That's where we need him. So it's like you've reached the top, and it's you know where to go from here. And it's been 10 years probably since he had his last real actual promotion. I'm sure he's gotten raises and stuff. So it's like be able to move somewhere else and maybe move up the chain and become a CEO or something like that down the line. That's probably pretty enticing too.
Yeah, that's true.
Finally, Roblox facilitates illegal gambling for minors, according to a new lawsuit. This comes from Kyle Orland at Ars Technica. A new proposed class action lawsuit, as noticed by Bloomberg Law, accuses user-generated metaverse company Roblox of profiting from and helping to power third-party websites that use the platform's Robux currency for unregulated gambling activities. In doing so, the lawsuit says Roblox is effectively working with and facilitating the gambling website defendants to offer illegal gambling opportunities for minors to use. The three gambling websites companies named in the lawsuit, Satozuki, Studs Entertainment, and Roblox Wild Entertainment, allow users to connect a Roblox account and convert an existing balance of Robux virtual currency into credits on the gambling site. Those credits act like virtual casino chips that can be used for simple wagers on those sites, ranging from blackjack to coin flip games. If a player wins, they can transfer their winnings back to Roblox platform back to the Roblox platform in the form of Robux, which again you could buy with real money currency, so it has a real value to it. The gambling sites use fake purchases of worthless dummy items to facilitate these Robux transfers, according to the lawsuit, and Roblox takes a 30% transaction fee both when the player cashes in and cashes out from the gambling sites. Roblox is you can do anything in there. It's like this massive platform. I'm not too surprised to hear this. I'm even less surprised to hear that Roblox as a company hasn't tried to step in and stop this. This seems like the kind of thing they'd be like, technically legal.
Yes. Just one more reason to add to the list that my children will never play Roblox, honestly. Yeah. I'm not surprised at all. Just all the news that comes out I feel like every month or every couple of months we hear another horror story about things that are happening on that platform, and they just play ignorant and say, nope, not our problem. It's whatever. Eventually that's going to catch up to them. Yeah. And this, what could be a very, profitable force for good, because you can do anything, will just turn into the next internet cesspool, which some may argue it already is. I know I'm saying that, all this stuff. Admittedly, I don't have that much exposure to Roblox. I've never really played it, so I'm sure the things that it can do that are, family friendly or game friendly, whatever, are great. Like I know that there's a big indie horror scene on Roblox with different games that have come out on there. So I'm sure that it has plenty of things to offer, but none of that matters if stuff like this keeps happening, where it's this, or if it's, like bullying on the platform and stuff like that. I'm not surprised, just like you. I'm not surprised that this A is happening, or B, that there's a blind eye being turned to it. I will be keeping an eye on this just to see where it goes, but add gambling to the list, I guess, of things that Roblox is doing that it shouldn't be.
Yep, absolutely. All right. I as promised on Friday when I missed this, I'll bring up a little bit of the Like a Dragon trailer. This is Infinite Wealth. Is that what we should be looking for? Or is that people want the Gaiden one? I think people wanted Infinite Wealth stuff. So there you go. Look at that. There you go. Those are some handsome men. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get back into the world of Like a Dragon. All right. Jason, I'm going to bring up the poll here in a second, but while I'm doing that, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on this week, all that kind of stuff. Any more stories that you brought home from the World Championships, anything like that?
There are a couple that I'm working on. One, we visited Creatures Inc., who makes the card game. That should be going up, hopefully, by midweek. One other story that I'm pitching out there. I hope I can land that pretty soon. Look for your emails, editors. But other than that, I am at Big Man Fanelli on X or Twitter, wherever we're calling it right now. I also host a podcast, a video game and esports podcast that was sponsored by a local radio station here in Philadelphia called Cheesesteaks and Controllers. So you can find me on all major streaming platforms talking about neither cheesesteaks nor controllers, just the games we play them with. Next episode will coming out probably tomorrow. I usually post on Fridays, but jet lag could not do it last Friday. So tomorrow I'm going to have out the World Championships recap episode and everything that I did out in Japan. I have interviews with two of the Pokemon Unite casters, Spraggles and Zoinks, that we talked about the game and the meta and stuff like that. But yeah, news articles on GameSpot, occasional review and feature at MMORPG.com, and also Epic Game Store newsroom. I have been posting some cool little articles there as well that recently started getting commissioning freelancers. So you'll see my name there.
I did see that. Well. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Pretty cool.
All right, so let's see. On Friday, I asked which gods will Kratos kill next. 44% said Egyptian, 18% said Santa, 10% said Celtic, 5% said Shinto, and 23% said American gods, which means the presidents. So Abraham Lincoln, watch out. Where do you think he's going? Because they're done with Norse, right? They're going to move on. Norse. Sorry, I said Norris.
Chuck Norris.
Yes, the Chuck Norris god.
I think Egypt makes the most sense narratively, and also I believe they've been teasing that throughout Ragnarok as well. But I would love to see Celtic. I think that is a slowly becoming a little more represented between Valhalla's DLC and Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, if you want to go back and check that out. But I think any exposure to the Celtic lore is fine by me. I think that would be pretty cool.
I think that'd be fantastic. I would really like to see that. Honestly, though, I think they could kind of do any of these or anything they do. They'll probably find a fun way of representing it. I hope it's Santa. Well, they should do a Christmas special, right? I would die for like Christmas nights, Christmas God of War. Like, let's go. Fucking destroy that old man. All right. I have a new poll question I'm going to put up right now. It is Charles Martinet, great or greatest? There you go. We'll discuss that tomorrow. Well, actually, excuse me, Wednesday when we're back with the new Game Mess Mornings. Tomorrow on Giant Bomb, we have the Giant Bomb cast going live for you on Tuesday. The rest of this week, we're going to have a lot of the normal shows. I'm sure the hope is we'll get Blake Club up and running with Dan doing the final stretch of Sonic 06. We'll have some other shows. I'll probably play some Mortal Kombat today. Trying to get through those story modes. Mortal Kombat 9. I think I should finish that today. If I get time, I think that's the plan. We'll see. But other than that, look out for the schedule. We'll post that after our meeting today. So that'll have all the information you need. In the meantime, Jason, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Always available. Just say the word. I'll come back if you'll have me.
We'll definitely get you back. You were great. Thank you, everybody, for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. And I forgot to take a break. I got to put that in there. I'll do it on Wednesday, Jan.
Poor Jan.
All right. There we go. I'm going to bring this up, and we'll raid somebody. Thanks, Jan.